Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Rumshot Diaries Season 1, Episode 5. Some of you who are probably watching, you're in the comments already or whatnot. First things first, shout out, drop your comments in. We'll try and respond to them as and when. But yeah, it's been a bit of a weird one. Remember, if you're following our Twitter, I've been talking about how content's going to increase now that certainly I'm on holiday. And you've seen a few Rumshot cuss-outs that have happened this week, discussing Shimron Hetmyer, discussing Darren Bravo, discussing the makeup of the West Indies team. But we move to our normal broadcast, which is Rumshot Diaries, and we're on episode 5, season 1 of Rumshot Diaries. And I'm going to bring up this question first things first from Atik, because Atik's saying, where is Santoki? Well, you know, colleagues, Santoki's just not available right now. He's there's happy circumstances for him, but he'll be back soon. So because Santoki couldn't be here, there's only one person that Caribbean Cricket Podcast can turn to if one of us isn't there. And come on, if you've all been following us for time, you know who it is. It's Nikhil. He's back. A more than capable deputy when Santoki or I aren't about. Nikhil, how you doing?
How you doing, Mash? Welcome to all of our viewers and listeners. Apologies for any background noise we may experience, but great to be back on the show. You know, a lot to pick from this series. Obviously disappointed by the result, but I still think, you know, in terms of us moving forward as a one-day international team, I've seen a lot of things that have pleased me in this series. So happy to get into it, the good and the bad, of course. And, you know, we've got a lot of cricket, Pakistan coming in tomorrow. So, yeah, a lot of cricket to discuss.
Yeah, so it's a bit of a weird one because, like you say, Nikhil, Pakistan, that series starts tomorrow, but it doesn't seem right. When I messaged you this morning, I was like, I feel like we've got to have some kind of discussion about the ODI series. We're not playing ODIs again until December later this year, so there is a massive gap. But I don't want this ODI series to get lost in the noise of the T20 starting with Pakistan. So Nikhil and I got together and said, come, let's do a Rumshot Diaries on this one and just talk through some key things. So we see your comments. Good afternoon to you. Contact, big support of the podcast. Love to see you there. Jeremiah, we see you. Laughter Express, we see you. But I'm going to hand to Nikhil first and foremost. And what I'm going to do is, for those of you who watched some recent episodes that Santoki and I did of Rumshot, we put up, so in fact, it was actually a podcast episode. We put up some key questions that we're going to discuss through the show. So this is question number 1. I'm going to put it straight to you, Nikhil. Overall, with the series, are you happy? Are you sad? Or are you indifferent? I should have probably put, or are you just okay with it? Where do you stand on that series, Nikhil? 2-1 Australia.
I can't say I'm happy because at the end of the day, we lost the series. But what I will say is that I would not say sad. I'm saying indifferent because when I look at the series on a whole and what there is to pick from it, I think we had a lot of positives in terms of this series under the tenureship of Kieron Pollard, who I think has been, you know, great as a leader. Just seeing his just simple mannerisms, forget the cricket, put the cricket and the strategy aside, just seeing the way he is. And Mash, I give you credit, you know, for a long time before Kieron Pollard was white ball captain, you, Santoki, and a couple others always pointed to him as one of those leaders in West Indies cricket. And I think he's been great. I know you mentioned his record as ODI captain, and we've been much improved. So yes, we've lost the series, and yes, it is a, you know, subpar Australia ODI team that came to the Caribbean. But at the end of the day, they've still got world-class players. Obviously, Mitchell Starc, so many. I mean, yes, we were lucky that Aaron Finch was unfortunately injured, but they've got so many quality players. Mitchell Marsh again doing well with it, for them with the bat in hand. Matthew Wade and so many others. So I'm so happy that we were able to win one game. And I think throughout this series, if you forget just the results and the wins or losses, we had Australia under pressure in many different phases of this series. And I think this is something in ODI cricket, which personally I think is our worst format out of the 3. I think this is something that we haven't been able to do in the past. So I was happy to see against an outfit like Australia, us able to, you know, stand up and fight even when our bats were against the walls.
Yeah, that's a good point you've raised right at the end there. I mean, okay, the first ODI was disappointing with the bat, but there were in every match of the series, there were elements to be proud of. Now, okay, the super critical West Indian fans will say that's not good enough. And you alluded to it, Nikhil, by saying it wasn't Australia's first It wasn't their first choice side. Their bowlers were their first choice bowlers, I hasten to add. And I think maybe we should touch on that a bit later. But the batsmen certainly weren't. But then as Pollard kind of spoke about it after every single ODI, the one thing about Australians is they're always going to come at you hard. It doesn't really matter who's playing for Australia. And if there's a criticism of weaker sides like the West Indies, if we're missing players like Australia's missing players, we're going to lose and lose badly. But Australia's strength in depth, England have the same, India have the same. Some teams, their strength in depth probably equals out to us at our peak. And some may not want to hear that, but I do think we've got to be realistic. So as much as we could have said, it was an Australian B team, maybe their B team is as strong as our A team. But anyways, for me, certainly wasn't happy. No, of course not. But I'm going to say to you, Nikhil, I was slightly indifferent on it all. And I'm going to put Contact's point up here. So Contact says, I'm indifferent on the result. The bowlers were excellent for the most part. It's huge for this year. Roddy Estwick must be bigged up for his work. And certainly I think from the TV feed that we had in the Caribbean, Roddy was interviewed quite a bit talking about the work that he's been doing with the bowlers. But the reason I want to talk about why I was indifferent, and it goes to this particular question here. Prior to the series, and this goes for everyone who's in the chat as well, and I'm going to ask you, Nikhil, first. Would you have taken 10 points from 30 before the series started? And the reason I'm going to ask you that is because at the end of the day, this ODI cricket has changed now. Yes, okay, there's still series in the conventional sense, but actually it's about points. And for those who haven't seen the ODI Super League, following this series, we're currently in 6th place on 40 points. I think Pakistan are level with us in terms of a similar kind of win-loss record. Every match matters. So yes, you can lose a series, but a 2-1 defeat is better than a 3-0 defeat in a series loss. So I want to know genuinely for West Indian fans, starting with Nikhil, if we'd been offered 10 out of the 30 before the series started, would you have taken that, Nikhil?
Personally, Mash, usually I'm very optimistic, etc. But if I look at Australia, yes, as we keep saying, without Steve Smith, without David Warner, without Pat Cummins, and so many of their other frontline players, I still think I would have taken the 10 because Australia will be probably in the top 3 sides, in this World Super League. And I mean, yes, we wanted to win the series, but going into this, I was realistic about how we've played one-day international cricket in the past. And I must say, if you had told me we could win one game, I would take that, because when you look at the grand scheme of things with the points, etc., not many teams, I don't know how many teams around the world will be able to take points off of Australia, especially when they get, their stronger teams. So obviously, I would have wanted 20 or even the 30 to win the series. But nonetheless, I'm still happy that we were able to get something. And I think it's an improvement because if you look at, I think it was the last 12 games, ODI games against Australia, we've only beaten them once. And that's dating back 9 years, all the way to 2013. So I think it's a step in the right direction. We did come close, I'll say in a sense, to winning the series, in the sense that I think if our batting had pulled away, we had enough bowling to sort of defend a bigger score, maybe 250 or somewhere around there. But I'm still happy to see the direction that we're going in. And I would have taken those 10, especially against an outfit like Australia.
As Contact says, I would have taken 10 because it's a 2-1 result. Australia, as similar to what you're saying, Nikhil, Australia are monsters in ODI. We can't compete them with an A team or a B team. Now, the reason I would have taken 10, I don't know if I would have definitely taken 10 prior to the series, because as you said, Nikhil, you always want more. I ideally would have wanted 20. But after the gap in the defeat in the first ODI, I think to share one of the next two, or to take 10 from the next two, I think it's got to be seen as a positive in that sense. Because I think everyone who saw what happened to us in the first ODI just assumed we were going to get rinsed 3-0 and that we'd take no points. To the point where when the COVID scare happened and it looked like the ODIs might not even happen, I was thinking, brilliant, we might actually get 10 points by default because they're going to have to give us 5 and 5. So in fairness, if I was already thinking the games were going to get called off, I have to take the 10 points. I have to take the 10 and say, well, actually, that's probably better than I thought you were going to do. Just bring up Dre saying the same. In ODIs, I'd definitely take 10 points versus Australia. And then Cledwin saying, if Stark is bowling like that, I think, and let's touch on that, Nikhil. Let's go there. If Stark is bowling like that, I think any side would have struggled. Then with Hazelwood as well, come on, quality teams to struggle against that bowling pair. Now, Nikhil, we saw it against South Africa in the tests with their bowling attacker, Mengidi, Nyoke, Rabada, and we struggle massively. It's not the same side, but we saw the struggles. We saw the struggles in New Zealand when we had to come up against their pace attack. This West Indian side, apart from in T20s, struggles against high quality pace. And I just think, Nikhil, don't get me wrong, there were some dismissals that were very disappointing, particularly in that final ODI. But we have to give some credit to the bowlers here. Start, 11 wickets at 10? Hazelwood basically going an economy under 3. Like, these are high quality bowlers, Nikhil. Talk on that for me.
No, I definitely said, Mitchell Starc, just to see the way he went about, he's come under question a lot in Test cricket in terms of his consistency. Even in T20 cricket, he's been taken. But when it comes to one-day international cricket, I don't think there are many right now going around in the world. I remember that World Cup he had. You think back to that delivery he got Ben Stokes with, that beautiful Yorker in that crucial Australia versus England game. He's just so effective in the one-day international format, and it's just because of his ability to consistently run up and bowl full and straight at the stumps. And I agree with Cledwin in the sense that I don't know many, who will be able to contend with that, because it's very uncomfortable to be playing deliveries at 143, 145. I mean, in the second ODI, his slowest delivery was 143. Like, just fathom that. His quickest was 148. So this guy really he will go down as a great in one-day international cricket, that's for sure. And I think he was excellent to watch, and really something that I want the Alzari Josephs and the, Shadow Cottrells, even the Obed McCoys, something to take from Mitchell Starc, because yes, they may not have the immense pace that he does, but just to see his consistency, always attacking the stumps, that's what gets him the wickets. And I think that's something that when you have as an asset can always be, so critical for you in any cricket, really.
So we talk about, so Nikhil and I so far, but believe it or not, people, Nikhil and I don't always agree, but so far, we're actually agreeing on everything thus far. But Nikhil, this topic here, this is the part now where we might disagree. And just for everyone's, before everyone starts, because this is the one that's going to entice the most engagement in the chat, I just want to point out before Nikhil and I start, I'm Jamaican, Nikhil is Barbadian, right? So we have the 3 people I'm about to mention, none of them are our countrymen. So we're completely neutral in what we say that comes next. Nikhil, the big talking point for the whole series, team selection. Nikhil, I don't know if you saw it, but in terms of online chatter, it certainly made its way onto commentary, newspapers. Everyone was chatting about it. Hetmyer only played 2 games. Bravo played all 3. Jason Mohammed played 2. People were shouting at the rooftops that Jason Mohammed shouldn't be anywhere near a West Indian ODI side. I had to do a couple of rumshot cuss-out videos to explain why Jason Mohammed was playing in the side, whether he deserved to be or not. Shimron came in, then went out, and then went in. People are saying Bravo's past it. Nikhil, I don't even know. The whole thing upset me, to be honest, but what's your take, Nikhil? Forget the rest of the team. Let's just focus on these 3 first and foremost. And the final thing I'll say before you start, Nikhil, for everybody who said Jason Mohammed should be nowhere near the team, this is why I did the cuss out after the first ODI. Last night, Kyron Pollard had to bowl off spin because we had no off spinner in the side. Now, before anyone says to me, Roston Chase, yes, Roston Chase, but he was injured, so we didn't have Roston Chase. If Roston Chase was there, I would have picked Roston Chase. Of course, I would have picked Roston Chase. And I would have backed Roston to hold the batting order together better, but he wasn't there. The only person who was there who could do what Roston Chase can do is Jason Mohammed. Nikhil, try and unpick that one.
What I'll say, Mash, is, I definitely did see all the backlash coming on Twitter and Instagram, etc. But I think we have to really sit down and evaluate this properly. Now, yes, many will say, Jason Mohammed, who, don't get me wrong, had an amazing Super 50 with the bat in hand. It's unfortunate he's able to replicate those results and performances in this series. But I cannot, as much as I wanted Shimron Hetmyer to play, I cannot, be critical of the fact that Mohammed was selected, because when you look at it, I think I'm kind of surprised that this was such a big deal, because when I look at it, I don't see how people can't understand that. Yes, Cledwin was one that messaged me on this. yes, you know, it's an option. But at the end of the day, how many teams do you know go into an ODI game with just 5 bowling options? You need to have that 6th bowling option. And it's unfortunate that our hands are tied and we're in this situation. Yes, we should have more depth. But I'm sorry, I definitely could understand why Jason Mohammed was selected in the team. The Darren Bravo one now, I think, is a bit tricky because personally, Mash, I'll say I think Shimron Hetmyer has to play every single one international for the West Indies. And I think it's as simple as that. Him and Nicholas Pooran, for me, obviously paired with Shea Hope. I've said this on a number of occasions. For me, those 3 guys have to be the 3 that our batting is built around. And I just think when you think back to some of the performances Shimron Hetmyer has had, I remember 100 in one of the ODIs versus England at Kensington Oval. But the 139 against India, to me, was really like a call to say this man is a special prospect, and he's one that is very valuable to West Indies cricket. And he's only played 6 one-day internationals since that 100, Mash, which to me is outrageous. And yes, as you said on Twitter, it's not their fault that he failed fitness tests, etc. But I think every opportunity he gets, every opportunity he should be given, because this guy is a truly special player. He's young, full of talent. Him and Nicholas Pooran for me going forward. It's a tough one, especially the fact that Darren Bravo has just scored 100, remember, in the last game of that Sri Lanka one-day international series. But for me, I think if I had to pick one based on the context of this series, it would have had to been Darren Bravo to sit for Hetmyer. But I cannot be overly critical of any decision made, because when you think about all 3 guys, and they all have merit to play. So I was kind of, you know, I would say surprised that there was so much backlash and abuse and criticism, because at the end of the day, we have to look at all 3 situations and why the selections were made.
Yeah, 100%. And to be honest, as much as I did the videos trying to, would I say I was defending? No, I don't think I was defending Jason Mohammed. I did those videos trying to explain why Jason Mohammed was playing and why it was difficult to fit Shimron Hetmyer in. But fundamentally, I agree with you, Nikhil. If Shimron Hetmyer is fit, and we are now saying he's fit, he has to play every single game for the West Indies. And it would be wrong of me to try and pretend that shouldn't be the case. Both him and Pooran and Shea Hope are the future going forward for West Indies, possibly across all 3 formats at some point in time. So fundamentally, you're right. Hetmyer must play. But I think what was difficult was how to get him to play. But I guess maybe in hindsight, what should have happened is you just pick him and worry about the next part afterwards, rather than trying to work out how to get him into the side, if that makes any sense. I mean, we're going to talk about moving forward possibly a bit later on in the chat, so I won't go there just yet. But there are question marks now about when we next come together to play ODIs, how the configuration of our side works. But we'll get onto that. Now, Nikhil, one thing that surprised me, though, and it's not about team selection. If actually, let me just put up a few comments before I get into that. So again, Contact's just saying, I agree with Nikhil on Hetty and Pooran. They should play all formats. Shea Hope should be able to play Test, but it's not working out so far. Dre says Bravo should have been carrying water. Cledwin says Darren merits his place. You just have to back him. Jason was in because it balanced out the team, but he wasn't actually balancing out the team once he was actually playing. What's this one? I'll give Darren one more full series before I make any moves. He has the talent to score big. We just need to force it out of him. And Contact, yeah, I'm with you on that. Read Darren Bravo. And arguably, Contact, you could make that same point about Darren Bravo in Tests as well. I don't know, Nikhil, if you remember for the South Africa series, both you and I were surprised he didn't play in the Test series. We both thought he was going to play in that second Test match, and he didn't get the call. So there's the same points Nikhil's making about Hetty should be playing. I would argue I'd make those same points about Darren Bravo in Test matches, but we'll get to that when we get to that. But Nikhil, this is where I come to you now as a Barbadian to talk specifically on something to do with Barbados, and you must know what I'm going to say. Nikhil, there was one thing about Barbados which I was... Nikhil, I was shocked, because to me, Kensington Oval is one of the bankers. When you talk about the Caribbean and you talk about true pitches where you don't expect problems, Kensington Oval is one of the few places where I'm like, yeah, that we're going to get a good deck. The third deck I don't believe Nikhil was fit for purpose. I genuinely don't. And that's not me going after Bayesians at all. I just genuinely don't believe it was fit for purpose. Kyron Pollard did not, as is the case with Kyron often, in the post-match conference, press conference afterwards, ripped the pitch to shreds. He owned that the batting was bad, but he said that was not an international class pitch. Nikhil, what did you feel about it all?
Yeah, Machel, unfortunately, you know, Kensington Oval is somewhere that I spend a lot of time, and obviously being me from Barbados, it's a ground that I really love, probably my favorite in the world if I had to choose one. And it's very unfortunate to see, you know, how things have turned out. And I think it's because of a lot of reasons. One, I think obviously the COVID-19 pandemic has had an effect. Not really only for the lockdown and groundsmen not being able to prepare surfaces, but also for the lack of cricket being played. Now, usually we would have domestic cricket going on, first class cricket. We would have club cricket finals being played at Kensington Oval, a lot of practice in the middle, etc. All these are factors, and I think these pitches suffer when there's a lot of cricket being played. Now, I'm not going to only say it's because of the COVID-19 pandemic. I also think, you know, someone has to be responsible, because I simply don't think it's good enough. As you said, Kensington Oval is a surface which has produced some of the world's best, greatest fast bowlers in cricket history. You know, when we think about Kensington Oval, you look at someone like Alzari Joseph, who's the leader wicket taker there in one-day international cricket. Shannon Gabriel's had a lot of success there, Kemar Roy, etc. It's traditionally a fast bowling surface. Never have I seen the Kensington Oval surface spin this much as it did in this series. And I think that's a sign of some concern. Yes, it's good to see that our spinners can do well, Akil Hussain, Hayden Walsh, etc. But I mean, as you said, Kensington Oval is a very true surface traditionally, and I think, you know, some questions need to be asked on this surface, because, I mean, we have the Pakistan T20s coming up, and we need to start preparing pitches, Machel, for us.
Yes.
You look at what's to come, and I know because of logistically the schedule may not have worked out, but Pakistan are coming to the Caribbean. Pakistan, who've got some of the best spinners, Shadab Khan, Usman Kadir, just to name a few. They're coming to play T20 cricket, one game in Barbados and the rest in Providence, Guyana. Both pitches, based on what we've just seen, will spin. And based on how the West Indies have gone about playing spin, you think back to the Sri Lanka series, even the Australia series in both white ball formats, I really worry. So I think we need to be a little smarter in our approach, and someone needs to take responsibility for Kensington Oval, because I don't think it was good enough.
No, it wasn't. And what was interesting to me, and some will say, yeah, but when Australia batted on it, it didn't look as dangerous. But I would disagree. It's just that we didn't have a big enough total. Like, if we'd made what we probably should have tried to make, which is what we needed, minimum 230, probably 230, 250 to 250, right? And I think Australia would have found that very difficult. But then let's just if people think about that, the fact that I'm saying 230 would have been difficult. That's the problem. I'm not even trying to say, at no point in the whole series did anyone look close like they could even get over 300. The pitch wouldn't have allowed that. The pitch looked bad enough in the first ODI, and it obviously just deteriorated through the course of the ODIs. And I think I'm glad Nikhil made that point. West Indies are... Yes, our standards have declined, but we don't prepare pitches to help ourselves. And I'm tired of other teams coming to the Caribbean and we've got conditions that actually suit their bowling attack. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. At the interval after we were bowled out, was it Zampa or was it Agar? Or I can't remember which person said it, might have been Turner, were like, this pitch is turning violently. And I was like, what? They're saying that after the first innings. That just shouldn't be happening. Not in an ODI. Turning violently. Come on. That pitch needs to be docked some points. So it's probably just as well that we've only now got one T20 in Barbados, because as Nikhil says, there needs to be more cricket played on that deck before hopefully it's back to its true form. But Nikhil, this one, I don't even know if I want to go to this comment. Not this comment. I might leave this one out. Let me go here instead. I don't even have the... Actually, do you know what, Nikhil? I'm going to it. Prepare yourself. Sure. We're staying in Barbados.
Bring it, man.
Where is it? 1 second. Jason Holder. Now. Jason Holder. Okay, so Jason, I just want to clarify before I start. Jason Holder makes my ODI team. I'm not. So before anyone thinks I'm about to say Jason Holder should be dropped, no, I'm not saying that at all. But there is a question mark to me about what Jason's role is in the ODI format. Against both Sri Lanka and now against obviously Australia, although I want to just point out before Nikhil goes in, Jason was given an extended break, and I'm not sure how many people know this. So he played the first he played the two he played some of the T20s versus South Africa and then had a break. He didn't play any of the T20s versus, and this was planned, by the way, because Jason's workload is more than any other player in the whole of the in the Caribbean. So he was given a planned break. So part of me believes that Jason's struggle with the ball in this series is because actually he didn't have any cricket in him. Yes, he came back and obviously would have gone through like the warm-ups and a bit of a camp and whatnot, but he wasn't playing consistently like everybody else. So I'm willing to cut him that amount of slack. But there are still questions to be asked about Jason's role. So Nikhil, I guess what I'm saying is not how do we fit Jason in, but what role do we give him? What do you believe is the ideal role for Jason in this ODI side?
I think Mash in this ODI side, for me, he's a must. Yes, as you said, he did struggle with the ball at times in this series, but you look at a delivery, he bowled to, I think it was Mitchell Marsh in that second ODI. That was like almost a test delivery, just, outside the off stump, kissed the edge beautifully, etc. I think for me, he's a must in all formats of West Indies cricket, and I can understand in terms of some questions about his role. You look at both white ball formats, we've seen him all over the place. In one game, he's batting at 3 in the T20s. Then he's bowling at front. He's bowling some in the death. I think he's an excellent new ball bowler. And I definitely think, that's probably where the majority of his overs should be utilized. But I say that, and many people may question his death ability. But when you look at the statistics in the IPL, for example, he was, sorry about that. For the IPL, for example, he was one of the best death bowlers in terms of being able to execute Yorkers in that tournament. So I think it's more about rhythm for me when I look at Jason Holder, and I was really happy to see him return with that 50. I think he's so crucial, even probably more crucial with the bat in hand, because our bowling is seeming to improve drastically, with the likes of Alzari Joseph, even Shadon Kotra, but then the two spinners. I think with the bat in hand, he's one of our best players of spin, and I think he has a massive role to play. Even seeing him go up the order in one-day international cricket would be something that I'm open for. However, it's tough to ask someone to bat at 4 or 5 and then also open the bowling. So the West Indies selectors will have to be a little careful in terms of, because as you said, you don't want to overwork him, but I think he has a crucial role to play with bat in hand, especially.
Yeah, and I'm looking in the comments. I don't know if I'm going to, I'm going to put contact. I'll be loving your points that you're making. So I'm going to throw this one in. Where do you stand on the skill? Because I actually think Holder should bat higher. I genuinely do. I don't, and I'm talking about this in T20s as well. I actually don't think Holder is suited to come in at 7. Not in ODIs and not in T20s. Holder's technique is good enough, and particularly we're not talking about the T20s, but just to give an example, we have so many left-handers in our top 5, I think, in T20s. Obviously, Lendl Simmons, but Holder should be used higher up the order. Where would you stand on that, Nikhil? Would you put him higher if you could?
I fully think so, Mash, and I'll tell you why. I think you sort of saw that model in the last game against South Africa, it was that he played, where he was actually brought up the order to try and neutralize Shamsi, the threat of Shamsi. In that game, I think he batted at 3. I think he needs to bat early, especially in T20 cricket, because you look around the world, most good teams have got a quality wrist spinner, probably a good finger spinner as well. And I think he is one of the best players to spin in these white ball sides. And I think he needs to bat up the order. And I heard Darren Gang on commentary allude to this. He said, what about the proposition in ODI cricket of splitting Pooran and Hetmyer? Hetmyer maybe at 3, Holder 4, then Pooran 5. I think it helps the balance of the team a lot more, because he's a steady mind, very experienced, can rotate the strike, but can also play that other role. I would be all for the move personally, getting him up the order.
And I just want to say before we move on from Holder, for those who are possibly questioning it, and Nikhil obviously works very closely with Barbados Tridents, and remember CPL starts in nearly 30 days, people. Holder last year in CPL was coming in the top 5, often number 4 and so on and so forth. So if you're sitting there and you're thinking, what do you mean Holder in the top 4? Jason's equipped to do this. This isn't This isn't about promoting Jason Holder just for the sake of promoting Jason Holder. We believe he could play. Trident's had him there for a reason. West Indies have tried him in the top 4 for a reason. So he has the batting smarts to play much higher up the order, and possibly, you could argue, be the person who glues the innings together. So I just think West Indies possibly need to look at that with regards to Jason. And if we looked at his bowling, Nikhil says that Jason should be used up front. Yeah, I just think we just need to look in general. I think we just need to make sure that Jason is given a role, and and that is the role, not a floating role, but just this is your one set role. Because I think he's used too much as a bit of a bits and pieces, but he's not a bits and pieces cricketer. He's the best player we've got, so maybe we should treat him like he's the best player we've got. Right, Nikhil. So we're going to bring this one to an end, people, with this very last issue, which is this. Now, the reason I've called this one Who Comes Next. So first things first, let me just remind people, because not all of you will know who we've got next on the horizon. We're not playing ODI cricket again till December 2021. So that's nearly 6 months away. And it's going to be Pakistan away, 3 games. Then Ireland come to the Caribbean for 3 games in January. Then we go to India for 3 games. Somewhere next year, we have to rearrange 3 ODIs versus New Zealand and 3 ODIs versus the Netherlands. I'll ignore those 2 for now. So they're basically 6 months away. We've got Pakistan. As much as there's been a lot of noise about who should be playing, who shouldn't be playing, this, that, and the other, Nikhil, before I come to you, let me just read some stats out to people. So before our next ODI series, it is, pandemic notwithstanding, we may or may not get some Super 50 games in before the ODI series starts. Super 50, for those who don't know, who aren't in the Caribbean, is normally November, like most of November to the start of December. So in theory, Super 50 should happen, be the grounding to then pick anybody for the ODI squad to go to Pakistan. But just in case that doesn't happen because of the pandemic, I just want to give people some reminders about numbers. These were the top, I'm going to give you the top 6. No, maybe top 7. These are the top 7 batsmen in Super 50 earlier this year in February. Jason Mohammed, this is in order. Jason Mohammed, Evan Lewis, Lendl Simmons, Jonathan Carter, Shimron Hetmyer, Chandrapal Hemraj, Devon Thomas, Justin Greaves, and Shamar Brooks. That's just the batting. I'm not going to talk about the bowling just yet. Nikhil, is there anybody from outside this squad who you would like West Indies to consider? And actually, somebody who I didn't mention, but that's because they weren't available to play Super 50. As in fact, where was he actually? Where was Carl Mayers? Was he there? In fact, did he play? I'm not sure how much Super 50. No, because he was in Bangladesh. What am I talking about? He was playing the test. So there's certain players, Josh De Silva, for example, who played well for the emerging side 2 years ago. Carl Mayers was in Bangladesh with the test team. So there's certain players I haven't mentioned who may well have been in the top 10. Nikhil, is there anyone outside of the squad who you think we should be looking at as potentials to get in it?
Well, Maj, I think, this guy is already considered because it's just unfortunate because of injury. He's not been included in this series. But I think Roston Chase, and this is, forget all Barbadian anything. I think yesterday was a perfect example of why we need someone like Roston Chase. Now, don't ask me how they're going to fit him in with all the discussion we've had about Jason Mohammed, Darren Bravo, Shimron Hetmyer, Nicholas Puran, all these guys back in the top order. But I think Roston Chase is so important because you look at a day like yesterday where spin is dominating. Kyron Pollard has to go and take off Akil Hussain out of the attack because of the left-handed batsman at the crease. Obviously, Akil Hussain being a left-arm spinner, less effective. We have no off-spinner in the team to bowl to these left-handers, and the pressure comes off because the pace comes back on. Australia get a lot more comfortable. It's not going to be easy, Mash, but I think it's imperative that someone like Roston Chase, who obviously bowls the off-spin, can bat in the top order, maybe at 4 or even a bit lower down. Yes, he hasn't had the greatest of Super 50s, but I think he's a quality player, and with his bowling is so crucial because we don't have a lot of quality off-spinners. It's an unfortunate thing in white ball cricket, and I think Roston Chase, I personally, for me, I think he should be at least considered for the one international team going forward.
Love that, Nikhil, and I don't disagree. And I think can I just agree with Nikhil and clarify something? Neither one of us is saying Roston Chase definitely plays, but we're saying he's got to be there or thereabouts. He's got to be part of because there's games where you would play a Roston Chase, there's games where you might not play a Roston Chase, but for that to happen, he's got to be there or thereabouts in the first place. A few of you, I'm just going to put up some names that some of you called and why I disagree. And Nikhil, if you disagree with me, just jump in. Lendl Simmons, no. And the reason why is because he's 35 and the World Cup's in 2 years' time. Yes, some of you will go, but Jason Mohammed's 34. Yes, that's also why I'm saying Jason Mohammed should be now dispensed with. Lendl's not going to play at a World Cup in 2 years' time. I just don't see it, basically. I'm not saying he's not good enough. I just don't see them going forward with a 35-year-old. Jermaine Blackwood is in the test squad, doesn't play enough Super 50. He's often on tour when there is something like Super 50. So again, he wouldn't get in. Shakes is agreeing with Nikhil here. Chase gives us different options. So agrees with Nikhil, solid batsman with good technique. And I just want to say about Chase as well, we have to remember that Chase was showing form again when he got into the test side versus South Africa. A few of you have mentioned bowlers, and this is going to be the last thing I end with Nikhil. So we said who comes next in terms of batsmen. Now, Nikhil, we aren't good enough to only have 5 bowlers we just aren't. And I'm sorry if that offends people. We're not a good enough ODI side. But so assuming someone like a Roston Chase could be a top order batsman who can bowl a bit, fine. But then we still have to talk about the 5 bowlers. At this point in time, Akil Hussain and Hayden Walsh Jr. have basically said, we must play. No problem with that whatsoever. Remember people that Fabian Allen didn't play in this and would normally be part of the squad as well, so he could be fitting in there somewhere. But the question mark is over the pacers. Alzari Joseph is our number 1 pacer. So there's no question marks about that. Jason is always going to play because he's Jason Holder, which leaves the question mark of Sheldon Cottrell, who I think is still not back to his best. Now, Nikhil, before you come in on this, again, just like I did with the batsman, these were the top 10 wicket takers in Super 50, just in case people don't know. Gudakesh Moti, Ravi Rampal, Quinton Boatswain, Anderson Phillip, Andre McCarthy, Imran Khan, Niall Smith, Joshua Bishop, Akil Hussain, and Ashley Nurse. Now, from that list, Nikhil, there's a name missing, but that's because he didn't play that much cricket. So I'm just going to throw to you 2 names only from that list that I would consider. Obed McCoy, if his fitness allows him to get through 10 overs, he's got to be in there for me. We've seen what he's been doing in the T20s. That level of variation. The only other name, and you've had more of a chance to see this person based in the Caribbean and probably hear more in the media, but I'm loving what Niall Smith is doing. And I would be promoting him into a squad sooner rather than later. Over to you, Nikhil.
Yeah, I think it's an excellent point, Mash. And I've been thinking about Obed McCoy. Watching that ODI yesterday, he was the only name ringing through my mind because I think when someone is able to achieve what he's been able to do in the T20s, I think we've got to find a way to get Obed McCoy in our ODI team. I think it's a good problem to have because I still think Sheldon Cottrell is quality. And I still think, with the right rhythm, with the right opportunities, he hasn't been given. He's been in and out, even yesterday, bowling 1-over spells here and there. So I don't think he's really had enough time to flourish and really get back into that rhythm. He bowled extremely well in that World Cup. Many will remember in 2019. So I wouldn't just pull the plug on Sheldon Cottrell yet, but I think 2 names that you mentioned, definitely Obed McCoy, based on just what he's been able to do in the T20s, and Niall Smith, who I think had an outstanding Super 50. I think it's good that we have these guys putting pressure on someone like Sheldon Cottrell to perform. But no, I would definitely consider them going forward. As you said, a long way before we play more ODI cricket, but hopefully at the Super 50, someone like a Niall Smith can come follow up that last Super 50 with another great performance and then work his way into the team.
So, ladies and gents and everyone who's been part of the chat, loving the comments as usual. This is why we do them live sometimes, because your comments drives a lot of what we say and do. But before Nikhil and I get out of here, there was just one comment that I feel that I should bring up. I'm just trying to find it, because even though we jumped on this to review the Australia-West Indies ODI series, sorry, Nikhil, bear with me because I don't even know if I can find it. But Atik was on here. I don't know if he's gone now, but he was basically saying, I think he's a Pakistan. Here we go. I think he was saying, what are you thinking about the T20s versus Pakistan? So just to remind everyone, that does begin tomorrow. The first of the T20s, which is at Kensington Oval. Then we move to Guyana for the final 3. Nikhil, we're back to T20s again. So we were subpar versus South Africa, completely dominant versus Australia. As you alluded to earlier on, Pakistan are going to come with spin, and that's before we talk about Shaheen Shah Afridi and Hassan Ali and all. And so I'm afraid for what their bowling attacks bring in. What's your gut feeling about the T20s? Just before we even get into them, what's your gut feeling about them, Nikhil?
My gut, looking at where we're playing the cricket match in Barbados and Guyana, I'm kind of scared. I'll be honest. I'm worried. However, this West Indian T20 team sometimes can do the unthinkable. What I will say is that Pakistan, for me, is one of the best T20 sides in the world, for me. And yes, many will say, oh, look, they just lost a series against England 2-1. I think at the World T20, teams will have their hands seriously full with Pakistan. They've got the bowling, as you mentioned. But when you talk about the batting, Babar Azam, one of the best in the world, my personal favorite batsman in the world, and Mohammed Rizwan just top scorer in that England series. The two of those guys will be serious to try to dismiss, to stop, to limit, because in any conditions, they're able to dominate. I think it's going to be a very good series because I think these two teams that are going against each other, West Indies and Pakistan, will be two of the best and two favorites to win the World Cup. So my gut is telling me, Mash, that yes, I think we have some degree of worry for Pakistan, but I think we've got enough firepower. I'm very pleased with the direction that our bowling is going in, and that's something that everyone always had questions about. To see the way Dwayne Bravo has come in, influenced the team not only with his leadership, but his ability to take wickets. Obed McCoy, of course. You've got Jason Horder, Andrew Russell able to contribute with wickets. Hayden Walsh had a fantastic T20 series against Australia. I think things are falling in the right place, and I think it could go either way. But it will be probably out of the three. You look at South Africa, Australia, I think this will be the closest and the best.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I will just raise, and I'm not actually going to go into any analysis on it because I wait to see how the games pan out. Certainly tomorrow's one. But there are some question marks similar to the ODI squad. There are some question marks about how the West Indies line up in our T20s. And I'm not sure, Nikhil, if we've actually answered those questions yet. Because we are persisting with Chris Gayle at 3 rather than opening, the same arguments will exist starting tomorrow as existed for the ODIs. How does Shimron Hetmyer get in the side if Chris Gayle is at 3? Now, I know, boy, already me just saying that's probably going to lead to a ton of comments from people in the chat. But Shimron can't get in if Chris Gayle's at 3. Me personally, I'd like to see them experiment with Chris Gayle opening with Evan Lewis or Lendon. No, it's got to be Evan because Evan's definitely playing, and putting Shimron Hetmyer at 3 because Gayle is the problem. I don't mean that how it's going to sound. Gayle's the problem here. If we persist with Gayle, there is no place for Hetmyer. And I don't know how we fix that, Nikhil. And I said I didn't want to go in depth on it, but do you have any comments on that?
Match, I think, is an extremely difficult one. But what I will say is the series that Chris Gayle just had against Australia, I don't see how you can leave him out for this series. And I think there may be a way of some things working out. Evan Lewis has played a lot of cricket. Remember, yesterday he had sort of that injury scare being struck on the helmet. So we may see some rest for Lewis, who's playing, all the white ball formats. He's been playing a lot of cricket from up to the Super 50 and on. I think we could see some rest for Evan Lewis in this series, and that could probably give Gayle the opportunity to open and get Hetmyer in. But it's a good problem to have, but it's a very tough decision that the selectors are going to have to make. Personally, they've been trying all different combinations. I want to see our strongest team play in a couple of these T20s just to see where we're at. I want to see our strongest team go out there.
Yeah, most definitely. Chatil, I see your comments read Gayle had one good match, but I think what you have to remember about Chris Gayle, and I think everybody just needs to accept this, he's going to play. So there's no point in having a conversation about Gayle. Chris Gayle's going to play. He's going to play at the World Cup. So there's no point in anybody telling me just don't play Gayle because that's just not happening. The Gayle has the confidence of the whole management and coaching and captain and everybody in that dressing room. So there's no point in saying, well, maybe we should just drop Gayle. That's a waste of time having that discussion. But as others say, I would move Gayle to open in at least one of these games, just to have the experiment. I think we're going to cut it there. But what I would say, because CPL is coming up, people. So yes, we got Pakistan, but just be mindful that CPL is coming up in 30 days' time or so. Nikhil will be there. I presume you're going to be in St. Kitts, Nikhil.
Yes, hopefully once things go right.
Yes, so Nikhil should be there on the ground for CPL this year, as he often is. But it's worth just reminding people re T20s that although the squad is kind of set, if anybody has an amazing CPL, they could still put their name in there. And I'm looking at someone like Spiceman. Spiceman has possibly played himself out of the squad, which means, for example, I would say that there's a spot for possibly a backup keeper. So I'm looking at Johnson Charles. I'm looking at even a Shea Hope. I'm looking at people like that and saying, listen, you lot have a good CPL. Anything can happen.
Mash, not to cut you, but I think one name, Carlos Brathwaite. I won't say anything else, but a big CPL
yes,
for him.
I'm with you. No, Nikhil, I'm totally with you. If I was a selector, Brathwaite's form, and I'm going all the way back to the Big Bash, by the way, Nikhil, Brathwaite's form, to me, in other T20s, suggests that he should be go. I'm not saying he must play. I'm just saying he should at least be in a squad to give us an option. So I totally agree with you on that, Nikhil. I don't know what more Carlos needs to do to draw attention to himself. And it would be a shame if he comes to CPL and doesn't have a strong CPL and then they use it as an excuse to not pick him when his form up until CPL has been very strong. But anyways, ladies and gents, that's been great, man. Nikhil, believe it or not, Nikhil and I, we only agreed to do this about 2 hours ago. we put it together quickly like that. But love you all in the chat. Good content, good questions, good you know, my words are gone now. But Nikhil will be back. You know how Nikhil is. Now, whenever Nikhil's in the house, you always say to us, bring him back. So Nikhil's always in and around. And Nikhil and I were discussing something which I won't give away just before we started. So look out for Nikhil doing something very soon with us. Look out for that on the near horizon. But that's been Rumshot Diaries Season 1, Episode 5. I'll give you the last words, Nikhil, before I say peace out.
No, just thanks everyone for watching. I think West Indies cricket, especially in the white ball formats, is in an exciting direction. We've got a World Cup at the end of the year. Let's just get behind the team. You know, all the great discussions that we're having about selection, I think these are great problems to have. And I'm excited to see what's to come in this Pakistan series going forward in both the T20 and the Test series.
Love that. Ladies and gentlemen, that's been Season 1, Episode 5. If you watched live, brilliant. If your friends didn't, you need to tell them. It'll be up on our YouTubes immediately after the stream is done. Thank you and good night.